By show of hands, would you quickly let me know how many of you are here for the first time? That's what I had heard. I do a lot of bragging about this particular event. When I sat in the seat down the street from the one I sit in now, I had the opportunity several times, as I'm sure General Everhart has, to try to convince our United States Air Force why this event is so special. There is no other event like it. There is no place to benchmark it. There's no way to say it's like this or that, and it ought to be baselined against it. And when you come to them and say you want 1,500 or more people to come to an event like this, they just don't understand. It's the fact that you have so many first-timers being exposed to what they get exposed to here. The classes are phenomenal. The seminars are wonderful. But that's just the small part. General Kelly mentioned it. This is a family business. And this is a family event. And what you get is a bunch of first-timers that have a chance to look for what I heard the Secretary of Defense refer to as admired leadership. And they get a chance to see it across generations. Now that's a wonderful thing. They don't have to go very far. They've got people like Gabaldon, Gaddis, Gillespie, Hale, Jackson, Metters, Molina, and Reams, our young leaders. And then they've got the folks down here, folks like Shalina Fry and Matt Caruso, and the folks who keep coming back and back year after year that have multiple stars in multiple places that are legends in our Air Force. You can't get that anywhere else, and I hope you take full advantage of it. If you have not come down towards the front and bothered these people, or had a chance to bother these people, you're missing out on one of the best aspects of this event. So let me say good morning. I saw the walking wounded coming in this morning with all the coffee. Kind of a zombie apocalypse kind of thing. There was no expressions on their faces until they had sucked down at least one latte something or other. But I am pleased to be with you today, and thank you very much, Joe McNabb, for that introduction. Those stories get better and better every time he tells them. By the time he finishes telling them, I'll be about 8 feet tall, and so thank you very much. Let me start with the thing I'm good at, and that's to say thank you. This is a phenomenal event, and ATA does a great job every year, and I can't imagine how it gets better year after year after year, but it does. And the number of first-timers is testimony to the fact that they get it. It's the younger people, it's the newer people, then that exposure is what we're going to be growing with going forward. So I'm here this morning to give you a keynote address. If you've ever heard me speak before, you know that I'm an introvert. If you haven't, let me tell you, I'm an introvert. So the term keynote address freaks me out. And then I have a CAG, wonderful CAG, the old guys that are leaving, and they've written a beautiful 40-page speech. I can't stand the sound of my voice for 40 pages. So when I was sitting back 25 years ago, I didn't want to hear a guy give a 40-page speech, and now I'm the guy and I don't want to give a 40-page speech. But what I want to do this morning is talk to you. Now, I scare them every single year when I come here because this speech means more to me than any one I give all year. Why? Because I care. And I want you to hear me. And so I put a lot of pressure on them and me to make this something worth listening to. So 25 years ago, I didn't even know what TRANSCOM was. I really didn't. I didn't have a full understanding of what the command was about. And you may not realize it, but you, as General McNabb said, are a critical element of the U.S. TRANSCOM mission. And if you remember nothing else besides a bad lip sync video, I want you to remember that an old guy stood in front of you and said, thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do for our combatant command. Thank you for providing rapid global mobility for the Joint Force. And thank you for providing options no other nation in the world has. Just a week and a half ago, I had a chance to sit in a room, and you may have seen it on television, with a picture of me with the President of the United States with a bunch of other 4-stars. I sat in that room, and before we went in, the Secretary of Defense and the chairman wanted each combatant commander to say in 1 minute, I was disciplined enough to do that. Some of the others weren't as disciplined. In 1 minute, he wanted us to connect our name with our command, what we do, and what our big concerns were. And if you give me about 30 seconds, let me tell you what I told the President of the United States. I said, Mr. President, my name is Darren McDew. I command the greatest combatant command we have. It's headquartered in the cornfields of Illinois, in the zip code called Scott Air Force Base. We are responsible for air, land, and sea transportation and medical evacuation for the Department of Defense. What we give you, is options no other nation has. A decisive force when you need it, an immediate force anywhere on the planet tonight. My concern is my ability to protect those options. We'll talk about that in just a minute. This year is TRANSCOM's 30th anniversary. 30 years of one of the most successful organizations in the Department of Defense. Some of the folks I mentioned up in the front row are part of that legacy. I heard we had maybe Generals Fogelman and Cross. I see McNabb and Everhart. I've talked about Fry and Caruso. Some of the greatest leaders in our history. We just had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at our 30th anniversary ball, and let me tell you this. He spoke, but that wasn't really what impressed me. He said great things about us. That's not what impressed me. What impressed me is he stood with us for 2 hours after he spoke, shook every hand, and took every selfie someone wanted to take with him. And I know his schedule. He stayed late into the night, and for one reason, he gets us. He fully understands the power and importance of this enterprise on the Joint Force. He understands our family. And he understands your willingness to sacrifice and how much you have sacrificed for this nation for more than a decade. He gets that. Now, this year's been another incredibly busy year. I say it every year. General Everhart says it every year. Whoever replaces us will say it every year because it's true. And you ought to take more pride every single year in knowing that that impact is being felt. It's not just being busy for busy's sake. It's from Europe to Asia, combat ops to disaster response, including back-to-back-to-back Category 4 hurricanes. Harvey, Irma, Maria, you've been busy. Now, I typically say that I lead the best. You heard me say it earlier. And the reason I can say it with great confidence is because all my combatant commander friends thank me for what you do. Now, let me share with you just a little bit of what they've been saying about you just this year.
What's the one thing that separates superpowers from great powers? Sing it with me, brothers and sisters. It's the U.S. Transportation Command.
I can't do it without you. It's all about our folks built on the foundation of our airmen.
I depend on everything you do for other combatant commanders downrange to help me maximize my capability here to defend the homeland.
Thanks for what you do around the globe every day, for all the services and your contribution to the fight.
I can't think of a time. I can't think of an episode. In some cases where it was crisis response activities, some cases methodically planned for quite some time. I can't think of a time where TRANSCOM did not deliver.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for what this command does for our nation. We would not be the greatest military in the world without Transportation Command. So thank you. Thank you, General. Thank you for what you and your folks do.
So maybe you'll start to believe me when I tell you how powerful what you do is. You don't get enough credit. You don't get enough accolades. You'll never be in a history book. Your job is, in fact, many times thankless. But you continue to get it done every single day. And every time I stand in front of you, I'll say simply those two words I'll say every time, and that's thank you very much. Events like this tend to focus on the past. And it's easy to do that, but I want to challenge you. I want to talk to you about what makes us who we are. How can we overcome our barriers to progress? I want to explore the changes in the world today that might impact us for years to come. And finally, I want to share with you a vision of the future, and then turn you loose to take on the wicked challenges of our time. Let me tell you this. We're going to start with a quote. My CAGs were pretty good usually when they're not doing bad lip sync videos, but what they found this time was a journalist by the name of Brooks Atkinson. And the quote's this: "This nation was built by those who took risks, pioneers who were not afraid of failure, scientists who were not afraid of the truth, thinkers who were not afraid of progress, dreamers who were not afraid of action." The same attributes of those who built this nation will be required of those who will take it into the future, despite the attempts of the people that are trying to hold them back. For example, take a look at the quotes I'm going to run up on the screen in the next couple minutes, and look at where these people got it wrong before. So, what do you think they were talking about? The rocket belt? Twitter toilet paper? No. That was a British politician in 1878, and he was talking about the light bulb. Can you imagine your world without a light bulb? Try this one. I always look to see the aviator's lips stop moving. Any guesses? Solar power? 3D printer? No. The Post-it note. Can you imagine that person that sits beside you's desk without all those Post-it notes all over it? Try this one. Any guesses? I think I know what it is. It's a Slinky, obviously. The Xbox. A couple of you probably figured this one out. No, it's not a drone. Yeah. Even the airplane had its doubters. This was a French general named Ferdinand Foch in 1903, and he was talking about the airplane. We know how that story goes. These are just a few examples in history where people, supposed experts in their field, spent more time debating why something wouldn't work than trying to figure out how it could, or even better, how it might change the world if it did. Innovation is more than just coming up with a few new ideas. I think it's more important. It's the willingness to implement those ideas. The naysayers throughout history have been those who've been afraid to take risks, afraid of failure, and I think they've simply lost their ability to dream. No one's immune. Even an organization like Transcom. When the concept of Transcom was first emerged 30 years ago, General Dwayne Cassidy was told it couldn't be done. In fact, some said it shouldn't be done. I've seen the staff summary sheet with all the naysayers listed on it. And despite the haters, this year we've got 30 years of wonderful history of U.S. Transportation Command. Now give me a couple minutes and let me brag about it in this next video.
Will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated.
I simply call this my hero video. And you've seen other hero videos where these celebrities get up there and have these testimonials of people telling them how wonderful they are. I feel confident in calling mine a hero video because it has actual heroes in it. My heroes are you and the people who do this mission every single day. You are part of U.S. Transcom's 140,000 strong people who don't get enough credit for what you do, and so my job is to make sure you get what you deserve. So thank you very much. You've earned the trust of every other combatant commander. I get those bear hugs routinely because they know that DoD looks to you to solve the wicked problems of our time, the toughest problems. And that's why we're getting now the authorities to actually put mobility assets where we need them, when we need them, in line with the SecDef's priorities. And we're not as much concerned anymore about who thinks they own the assets. We're getting that for one simple reason. You've proven that you'll always be there when they call. Even though this command has been successful for 30 years, you've been successful for 30 years. The world is changing every single day, and we have to change too. The best time to change is when you're at your best, and it's not just enough to get by. So how do we do that? I have a few ideas, but first I need to share with you a theory, a concept, something that'll frame our discussion. Now, sociologists will say that human beings are value programmed between the ages of 11 and 12. Your value programming is based on a foundation. It includes your upbringing, your education, and your experience. Your behavior and the decisions that you make every day thereafter are influenced by your past. I believe that in adult life, this is my thought, a similar value programming takes place. As you grow up and you upgrade and you change your qualifications, you're programmed by your training. You're programmed by your leaders and your successes, and most importantly, by your challenges. Your value programming will make you think through the lens you've always thought through, whether it still applies or not, because it's your lens. You'll repeat patterns and behaviors and sometimes even perpetuate bad behavior just because it's your comfort zone. You'll allow yourself and you'll become shackled by your preconceived notions and biases, and you won't even realize it because it's your value programming. Let's take me, for example. I'm a cold warrior. 35 years ago, I was ready for the most complex world I could ever imagine. I spent days and nights on alert with Strategic Air Command, waiting for the big one. We spent every waking moment preparing to go toe-to-toe with the Soviets in the Fulda Gap. Our value programming influenced the force we built, the way we organized, and how we thought about war. We were big and a lethal force, ready to take on another big, lethal force. It was purely going to be nation-on-nation state conflict. I was ready. Every waking moment, some sleeping moments, waiting and ready. I couldn't imagine a world more complex than that one. How simple those days were. In the next generation, you have the Desert Shield and Stormers. The senior leaders of that time grew up in Vietnam. In fact, the Powell Doctrine was a result, I believe, of a young captain's experiences in that war, waiting for decisions that were made in Washington, D.C., feeling as though he was fighting with one hand tied behind his back. He never wanted his country. He never wanted to see it go through the quagmire of a protracted war again. And now General Powell, flash forward, is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He has an all-volunteer force. We bring overwhelming force to the enemy and validate a decade of hard work and training with a big win. Finally, it's most of you, the post-9/11 military, where everything starts with why. In that time, we fought using terms like COIN and security cooperation. We brought our equipment to the theater, and we kept it there for well over a decade. Strategic decisions were still being made back in Washington, D.C., but tactical decisions with strategic implications were made on the ground. Our senior leaders had more access to more information than ever before in our history, and they weren't afraid to use it, whether it was appropriate to use it or not. Today, we've got a mix of all three generations in our force. My concern is how current world events are shaping today's senior leaders. How are we shaping your lens? What will it come to next? I believe the changing character of war will define our time. The most significant changes are the result of emerging technology, volatile geopolitics, and shifting demographics. These considerations are not only changing societies and the way we fight, they're also changing why and where wars are fought. And in fact, they're changing who is actually fighting wars. Conflict increasingly transcends geographic boundaries. Globally networked information consumers swim in a sea of disinformation. Future wars may be fought against a technologically advanced adversary, or definitely one that may be numerically superior. We have to transport and sustain forces across lines of contested communication. Now, no doubt you've heard about contested environments, and some of you feel as though you've lived through them for most of your career. But honestly, it's been since World War II that we dealt with truly contested lines. The Joint Force has enjoyed, now let me say, the Joint Force has been led to believe that we will always have air supremacy and domain dominance. And we've enjoyed it for 70 years. But the tactics, techniques, and procedures that make us successful today, we can't count on them to ensure success tomorrow. Now, rest assured, still, no other nation in the world can do what we do. There are a couple of great powers in the world, but there is still only one superpower. The difference between them and us is our ability to project power at the time and place of our choosing, anywhere, anytime, all the time. That is our strategic airlift fleet. That's our air refueling fleet. That's how we deliver that immediate force. That underpins our ability to deliver that decisive force when needed. We have to preserve that capability, and it starts simply with you. Our nation rests comfortably in your hands. But consider this. June 22nd, 2017, 20 American vessels operating in the Black Sea reported their GPS was malfunctioning. It was displaying their position 25 miles away from where they actually were. It said they were on land at an airport. Ships on land. Pretty crazy. Not the ideal spot for a container ship. All the while, their systems and data were saying that they were safe within 100 meters. They had been spoofed. Now, what if your aircraft is suddenly 25 miles off course? What if your ATO, mission frag, or mission planning software was compromised? Would you even know? An adversary doesn't have to shoot us down. All they have to do is slow us down. All they have to do is actually make us doubt the accuracy of our own data. And once you've lost veracity, how do you get it back? We will check and double check and triple check. By the time we figure it out, our adversaries may have already won. And they won't use MiGs and missiles. They'll use ones and zeros. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the reality of our time. It doesn't matter if we have the most lethal military in the world if we can't get it to where it needs to go. That's why one of my command's 4 priorities is cyber. The cyber problem isn't a comm or an IT problem. It's a leadership issue. When I took command, I thought it needed 4-star attention. My opinion has only been fortified over the last 2 years. This is commander, CEO business, too important to be left to just the IT and the CIO folks. It's everybody's job. Since then, we've invited experts from government, industry, academia to help us understand the problem. We hosted heads of cybersecurity firms, chief information officers, and some very pink-haired hackers. She shows up every single time. Her hair color is different every single time, but she has been dedicated to helping us get from where we were to where we need to be. With this new awareness, I was also asked my team to conduct a contested environments war game. One of the grand epiphanies that came out of the war game is what I feared, that our enterprise might just be the soft underbelly of the DoD when it comes to cyber. 90% of logistics and global movement operations are coordinated, as you know, on the unclassified commercial networks. Yet the COCOMs treat their planners like mushrooms. They keep them in a cool, dark room with no windows, and they feed them very rich fertilizer. As a community, we inform and create war plans on secure networks, but out of necessity, we execute on unsecure commercial networks. And we do all this despite the fact that we lack an industry standard for cybersecurity. The presence of our adversaries and other illicit actors on the cyber domain presents, I believe, the biggest threat to our decisive advantage. Yes, we are the world's only superpower, but we can't afford to assume that our dominance will go unchallenged. And I'll tell you right now, it's being challenged every day. Only a short time ago, the mobility community was admiring the cyber problem. Today, I believe that we're leading the discussion in DoD. Now, as a 35-year airman and an aviator, I did not expect to be part of a cyber discussion at all. But today, I talk more about cyber and maritime than anything else I do. We are shaping clearly a vision of mission assurance in cyberspace. But how? One element, first, we're sprinting to the cloud. Now, I didn't say walking to the cloud, crawling to the cloud, hoping to get to the cloud. I said sprinting to the cloud. And what does that mean? The cloud provides the redundancy and resiliency that we didn't have before. And it's rapidly scalable. If we need to surge capacity, we can surge capacity. We can do it instantaneously, and we only pay for what we use when we're using it. Next, we realized our future is actually in data. We're working hard to build this thing called a data lake. Now, if you'd asked me a year ago what a data lake was, I'd said I have no idea. But today I know what a data lake is. And one day in the future, I predict a Transcom commander will stand here in front of you and care more about the data of the stuff he or she moves than the stuff we actually move. Because that data will lead us to artificial intelligence, which will keep us from having to wait to make a decision when we're being targeted in the cyber domain. Waiting is not an option in the speed of war we'll be fighting. It seems unimaginable to think it, but this is not that far off. And what scares me is some of our adversaries are right there right now, and we're behind. Data is just one piece of the puzzle. Cyber defense must be an integral part to everything we do, and we've got to move forward in solidarity. Government, industry, academia, and guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We need to bring society with us because we can't do it by ourselves. So how? I think we need to change the way we think about cyber. We need to do a different value programming. We need to insert a new lens in the face of naysayers. And I'm going to use an example of public health. For example, at one point, we value programmed generations of Americans with phrases like, and you should be familiar with these, cover your mouth when you sneeze or cough. Wash your hands. I remember actually my 6-year-old daughter coming home from school one day and saying, Dad, what are you doing? And I was about to take one of those plastic rings that comes off a 6-pack of sodas, and I thought I was pretty advanced because I was going to recycle it. She wanted me to cut it up. Why? Because it could hurt the dolphins. We had evolved to that point, and we'd put all of that in schools. Cover your mouth. Wash your hands. Don't hurt the dolphins. Our children understood the environment. Our children understood public health. But we haven't started to train them to think about cyber. And cyber is going to be the challenge of our time. Even still, no one expects perfection. People are still going to get sick, even after you wash your hands and you cough into your sleeves. But if we do those things, it leads to fewer epidemics. And like public health, we have got to get some sense of cyber norms and cyber standards. So they don't just protect you, they protect everyone. These social conventions prepare us for how we act and ultimately for the types of decisions we'll make when things do in fact go bad. This technology we have to take as seriously as we do public health. So my grandson, who is brilliant and quite handsome, 2.5 years old, he's a wizard on an iPad. He'll click on anything that pops up. The problem is, he'll click on anything that pops up. The current generation brought with it that component of digital technology comfort into the workplace. But ask yourself this: does digital comfort equate to understanding? Does comfort equate to protecting themselves and knowing how to protect each other? We can't click on everything. Cyber hygiene and cybersecurity must become part of who we are, a Pavlovian response, if you will. We got to have it that way. I recently visited Estonia. They are teaching coding in elementary school. Why? Because they have a very large neighbor to their east who taught the importance of cyber defense to them with one quick, hard lesson, one event. Estonia now gets it. It takes a collective defense to prepare for the existential threat that persists in cyber. What will it take for us, Americans? That scares me. I'm already there. I need you to join me. The challenges of our time will not be solved by the templates of the past. The Cold Warriors, the Desert Shield and Stormers, they did what they needed to do to thrive, but that was their time. This is our time. Is what we're doing today good enough for tomorrow? The light bulb, the airplane, even U.S. Transcom, they were possible because people like you had the courage to act, the audacity to fail, the intellectual curiosity to discover the truth. We have to change, and we have to do it together. How is your value programming holding you back? Are you going to leverage your experiences, or are you going to be shackled by them? How are you going to drive forward when everybody around you wants to hold you back? Now, it sounds like a downer, but let me tell you this. I believe this. Someone in this room is the pioneer who will push on in the face of failure. Someone in this room is the thinker who will resolve the greatest issues of our time. Most importantly, someone in this room is the dreamer who will make the unimaginable a reality. Which one are you? Are you the person who can imagine the light bulb, or the person who says it will never work and designs a better oil lamp? There's one last thing I want to leave you with, and there's so much going on in the world right now. Our adversaries are watching us, and they're waiting. They're waiting for an experiment that many call an experiment called democracy to fail. Some believe eventually we will self-destruct. There are days I worry, but I still believe in you. I still believe in the ability to imagine a world 30 years from now, a world that will look nothing like the one we know today. I believe that we will build a better world together. I know you can, I know you will. But please, this experiment has lasted for 200 plus years. And it's lasted that long for one simple reason. We all have a story. You have a story, I have a story, but ultimately, we have our story. And every time I think about that, that's the thing that holds us together. And I go quickly to a set of song lyrics that might sound familiar. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. People like King and Lacoste and those wonderful Heiser Award winners and Stockett and Stearns and Davis, Rivera and Watson. I believe that you're going to get us through this. I believe we're going to get through this. I thank you very much for your time, your willingness to act, and all you do to make this nation the best I've ever seen. Thank you very much.